I did just want to make a quick comment that when I was not on the board, I didn't realize that each year there was a budget meeting that we actually had last week where community members were invited to come and they could ask any questions that they might have. We were here and sat here for quite some time, ready to take questions from the public. I think we had how many people show up? Four? Four people. So I just did want to bring that up. I'm trying to think of how we can provide more information. It was out on social media. There were emails that went home. It was in newsletters. Everyone here was invited to come and ask any questions that they might have. And unfortunately, there were four people. So just as a heads up for next year, I would encourage folks, if you have questions, we were here for as long as we would have needed to be here. So just keep that in mind a year from now.
And if you still have questions, please feel free to email, reach out. There will be community budget meetings where we go over the budget, and our superintendent and our assistant superintendent for finance, Mr. Stevens, will go over it. So there are still ways to share thoughts and feelings. Please feel free.
Thank you. Tick that off my president's report item. But okay, so president's report on the agenda now.
Can I do a quick question?
No, public comment time's over.
No, I was going to ask about, I was going to comment on what that young lady said about.
Understand it's not part of the meeting. So I had the budget meeting. Want to open up the time. I'll get to in a little bit to the other board members who attended the legislative breakfast. That is an annual breakfast put on by the Monroe County School Board Association in terms of inviting all the legislatures that represent this county. And, we even had those at the federal level show up. Joe Morelli, right, showed up this year. So I will get to that in a moment. Just want to, as always, share appreciation for overall the participation. We do worry about survey fatigue. We think there's been a lot this year, and yet people participated. We had a large participation in the masking survey that went out. We had a large participation in the thought exchanges, and having done that a little bit myself, and some people who interacted with me about what they were doing in the thought exchanges, I realized what amount of time it took. On average, I think each person who participated read at least 60 comments and rated that and how it stood. It's not we know it's not a scientific, it is a single data point for us to try and get a feel for what's important to the community, but it was one of those data points, and just appreciate people taking time because it is time to go through that thought exchange, and there were 30,000 comments or something. It was just a huge effort. So thank you for doing all that. I had in my report, and it kind of goes with some of the public comments that were concerned about teacher morale. I had read a study done. I'm not sure if it's a study or probably better called a survey. 90% of teachers feel burned out, right? So reading that, for those who may not be aware, we get daily notices of news reports from both within the state and around the country. Try to peruse those as best we can, at least well, I'm pretty sure I know everybody does. And just know that it's been a challenging time. We know that the year where it was hybrid, in school or whatnot, I think I had read that year of 900 during that, not this year, last year, 900 extra hours. And you think about what that means. If it is a 2,000-hour work year, 900 represents half a year of extra hours that our staff was putting in on average per teacher. And so this year is indeed different. Grateful that we'll be later on in this meeting approving additional subs. We've had the greatest turnout and what's the word I'm looking for? Darn it, HR recruiting of subs than we've ever had. The number of people signed up to substitute from our community has been fantastic. Our bus drivers' numbers are up considerably as we approve that. So we've had really good responses to the needs, and has ebbed some of that feel of concern that are we going to have to close schools or a school because of otherwise. So total new subs, thanks for showing that. Was that going to be part of yours? I don't want to steal your report. 56, right? And transportation, 19 really has taken the edge off what we were feeling. We were worried every day-to-day basis. Are we going to be able to get kids to the schools? We want to keep them open. We're going to have subs. We want to keep the schools open again. We know the students need and want to be here. So the success of our administration team of addressing this, although it doesn't turn around overnight, has been fantastic, and I appreciate that. So thank you for participating. I thought, reading the thought exchanges overall, that indeed it aligned well. I really appreciated the people, again, on behalf of our staff, who advocated for the pay of all of the staff in the schools. And it had been a project of this board since the beginning of the school year, even before budget was out there necessarily, to be taking that on. And we have been methodically going through and looking at that, and still have work ahead of us there. But thank you for the community letting us know how important that is to you. So to the legislative breakfast, I ended up being out of town for a wedding at the last minute. I decided to go at the last minute and was really glad I did, but I missed. This is an awesome event. So Joyce, can we start down with you, and we'll just go down the row, the feedback on the legislative breakfast?
It was one of the biggest turnouts we've had, both from the legislators' point of view and from our members. It was very informative. We had 2 different sessions seated at the table. As you know, we usually sit and have breakfast and talk to whoever is at our table. And so we had 2 different sessions so that people could get to hear from and question and ask, questions to different people. I was the table leader for our assemblywoman and for Wade Norwood, our regent. So we had assembly members, senators, we had our congressmen, and we had a board of regents present. So it was very, very informative. It was also one of the most positive breakfasts that I can recall, because everybody seemed to be in line, regardless of party. It's kind of the opposite of what we're seeing nationally. They were really very pleasant and in agreement, and we've seen that through our Zoom meetings throughout. We've been Zooming with them as well, and I've noticed the same thing. So it was a very positive morning. I was grateful for all of them to show up and give their time, and also for all the members who came to be part of it. It's across all of Monroe County, so it was quite a good turnout.
Thank you for attending. Mary Kelly, were you there? Sorry, I don't remember who was.
I apologize, no.
No, don't apologize. I wasn't there either. But Damon, anything you want to add? Or
Oh, that was a great summary. I think that the overall tone was really very positive, and we've been in years past, many years in the past, and we were always really stressing the amount of aid that we were getting, and advocating for more foundation aid and against the GEA and everything else. So this year was very different, given the governor's proposed budget, very positive in that light. So we sat with Jen Lunsford. I think you did a great job of moderating, but she was very in tune with our needs as a Monroe County school district, and thought it was very good. So
thank you. No? Okay, great. Thank you. I do find that they listen well when I've been there in the past. I think we've had evidence of that at the federal level. Again, Joe Morelli, who sponsored What Can You Do to try and make it a little easier to become a bus driver, those things that are part of the CDL that don't make sense for the bus driver side, but they had to do it, and easing some of those regulations. And then at the state level as well, as they've looked at it, but they show signs that they listen and do what they can to see if they can get enough votes for it. So always time well spent, I think. And thank you to those. I know we have several on the legislative committee, so meeting monthly and advocating for us as a district as well as schools in general. That takes us to the end of the president's report then, and we will move on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Thank you to our Board of Education for giving me the opportunity to be superintendent of the Fairport Central School District. You know, part of my report was this bright spot of meeting students where they are, how we're supporting the academic needs of our students. Really proud
Our
of
primary
all the
mission
great
in our
efforts. So it's been fun doing those bright spots, but more importantly, what's happening in our buildings. There's lots of life, lots of positive energy. In all of our buildings, they're celebrating and learning Black history and the important contributions that are made by African Americans throughout American history. But that's just 1 month. And I think that's 1 month that we honor, recognize, and celebrate, but it goes deeper than that. We've been talking about how do we talk about increase our diversity? How do we make sure that our curriculum, our recruiting, our family partnerships, our data and our policies, and our professional learning supports this imperative that, as we see, the nation is struggling with. And our kids speak to us daily. They talk to us about what their hopes and expectations are for the future. Our community has spoken to us as well. And we appreciate the feedback. We appreciate the partnership of over 100 community members are on the Diversity Council, where they're talking about what I call the big rocks up here. And I'm proud of these efforts. I'm proud of the efforts and the celebrations that are occurring on a daily basis, and particularly during Black History Month this February. Also, Heartbeat is alive and well. You walk in any one of our schools this past month, there's celebrations. We have students talking about love and Valentine's Day. You want to go and see the spirit and the passion of our schools come around during these celebratory months. Valentine's Day, the expression of love, was alive and well. In the bottom right-hand corner, you see Erica McDermott, who is one of our lead teachers who works in the Northside Hack Lab. Students are coding, right? And they're problem solving, and they're working collectively and doing all they can. Jump in, sure.
We were lucky to go visit Northside, and we got to see Miss McDermott, and the students were in the hallway, and they had coded these little balls to make figure skate routines. So they were connecting it to the Olympics, so they had to program them to do different spins and tricks and stuff through the computer and then perform it for their classmates. It was exceptional, amazing work happening.
And the kids were so excited to show it off.
Yeah.
The joy, the fun, the excitement, and the learning, the problem solving, it's all right there, and we get to see it up close and personal. And I have to say, this board's really tuned in. Not only we try to make academic experiences meaningful and rigorous, but we always have made the mental health of our students and our staff a priority. It's school counseling month or last week, and we honored and recognized our school counselors, our mental health professionals. We have incredible investments in such an incredibly important group of professionals who go into classrooms, who meet with students, who connect with parents, and support each other in so many different ways. Last week, there were therapy dogs in our schools, again, trying to meet all the different range of needs that we are managing and supporting. And we do that with such honor and high regard, and we're honored to do that. Don't forget, there's kindergarten registration occurring right now. So if you have kindergartners out there, we look forward to seeing you in our schools. Last week, a letter came out from Monroe County superintendents that spoke to the governor. Many different letters throughout the state were also shared, but it's just asking the governor for guidance and direction on how to move forward. And we were able to get that. Last week, there was a YouTube Live event where the board, again, really in tune to what the community's thoughts and expectations were, had a YouTube Live event. People were here as well. And we talked about masking. We talked about what the governor was speaking about. We talked about the survey that we shared with the community, where we had a great response from our community. So, March 4th is an important time as we look to find the off-ramp. Cases per 100,000, infection rates, hospital admissions, pediatric hospitalizations, local vaccination rates, global trends, all these are elements, and not just one of them is important, all of them working together. They all will help inform us how we move forward. We really do see that as we move along, that we will be transitioning to a mask optional policy. So what we're doing right now is we're going to continue to seek the guidance that's available to us. We need to make sure over the next couple of weeks we are making sure people have access to KN95s, rapid test kits, on-site testing clinics. These were all things or considerations that our community said that would make them feel comfortable. It was a 65-35 split, 65% in favor of optional masking, but as we added considerations like K95 masks, rapid testing kits, on-site testing clinics, and vaccination rates. I just checked today, one-shot dosage is 90%. for our community. That's up from 3 weeks ago. So those numbers look promising as we continue to move forward. Did you want to say something? Or I thought, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Right.
So, yeah.
I'm sorry, 90%, is that in schools or Fairport community?
Our overall 5 through
School, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. And that's on the Monroe County or Finger Lakes dashboard. Okay. So we're looking forward to seeing the next couple weeks unfold. But the next couple weeks are really important because it's going to give us time to get organized, create opportunities for staff and students to transition. Because turning on a dime it's not going to happen overnight. I mean, there's people who have strong feelings about this on both sides of the conversation, and we need to use the next 2 weeks to get ready for the transition. So we're hopeful as we move forward. I think as Board President Peter Forsgren mentioned, I'm really proud of this effort. 56 new subs have been onboarded, 19 transportation employees have been hired since July, but more recently, it really speaks to the board's commitment to making sure that we can support recruitment and retention efforts, and we're looking forward to continuing to grow this as we move forward. You can never have enough subs. You can never have enough people working in transportation. We really understand what essential workers mean, but we're really confident and comfortable that we keep projecting and trending in the right direction. There was a thought exchange on budget. I think Peter Forsgren was speaking about we had 500 responses, over 30,000 reactions, that spoke to. There was a budget meeting that was on YouTube Live, presented to the entire community, so they had an opportunity to ask questions. We had one question, I believe, from a community member we were able to answer and then follow up with. We look forward to continuing to listening and learning as we create a budget and support our Fairport story. Next month, it's going to be Brotherhood Sisterhood Week, right? It's going to be civility, awareness, respecting each other, and embracing our differences in a way that we've been doing for over 25 years here. It's not new. It's deeply embedded in our DNA, and I'm honored and proud to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the most anticipated weeks of the school year, which, as I learned, much to my surprise, is coming as a community outside 20 years ago. So thank you for that report. We have a treasure and investment update by our Assistant Superintendent for, what's the word? For budget or finance. There we go. Business. Mr. Matt Stevens.
Okay, thank you and good evening. Tonight we have the treasure and investment update for the month of December of 2021. We had a beginning cash balance in the general fund of $96.9 million, receipts during the month of $3.4 million, disbursements of $14.9 million for an ending cash balance of $85.4 million. Of the $85.4, approximately $83.1 was invested in a mix of money market, cash sweep account, insured cash sweep, and CDARS. It's about 97% of the overall general fund cash. From a revenue expense standpoint, $91.6 million recognized for revenue through December and $54.6 million in expenses on trend, similar to prior year as a whole. With our cash, we know we'll start to see the cash go out faster than it comes in some months. As our tax revenue came in earlier on in the year, we will have some state aid that does hit throughout the school year as well at different points. And that's the report for the month of December.
Thank you. Okay, so next on is the consent calendar. Remind the board that anything in the consent calendar is just up for summary motion and approval, not for discussion. If there's anything in this that you would like to discuss individually, then now's the time to make a motion to amend the agenda accordingly. If not, then I need a motion to approve the consent calendar. Ryan, thank you. Marty, second. All in favor? Any opposed? Hearing, seeing none. 7-0. And then we have donations. Donation here is specific for Brotherhood Sisterhood Week from NYSER, the New York Schools Insurance Reciprocal Organization, donating $1,000. So a motion to approve or accept this donation. Mary Caitlin, second. Joyce, and as always, our gratitude. I think, as I point out to someone today, the donations are always part of our agenda. We consistently have donations coming in and can expect that, I think, to continue. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing, hearing none, 7-0. Personnel actions. Motion to approve the staff actions recommended by the superintendent of schools. Need a motion? Joyce, first, second. Marty?
Before you vote on that, there's a number of
discussion.
retirements up here. I don't mean to interrupt that. I apologize, but I
Nope.
know that.
It's a good time to interrupt.
Right. So we'd be looking forward to accepting, well, not looking forward to, but accepting these, looking forward for them because it's a great hallmark opportunity in their careers. It's a celebration of their careers. But Kathy Beck, Margaret Benedetto, Teresa or Terry Ely, Barb Gognio from Jefferson Avenue, Linda Jackson, Ann Monjo, Sandy Murray, and Sarah Williams are teachers who will be seeking your approval. And then Dave Dunn, who is a principal at Martha Brown, is also retirement for consideration. Congratulations.
Sorry, I mentioned Ann as well.
Oh, and Ann, yes, Ann Stanger, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, doesn't matter what you vote, guys, on this, okay? They're retiring, but I tried many times. But regardless, grateful for those and all their years of service. Questions or comments as well? No? All in favor? Any opposed? Hearing seen none, 7-0. Motion to approve the non-instructional civil service staff. Motion to approve? Marty, thank you. Second, Brian. Questions, comments here? Anything to point out as well in this area, Brett? Nope, all good. Very good. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing, hearing none, 7-0. Athletics. Motion to approve the following the coaches that are listed. Most of these, if not all of them, are spring coaches. And resignation. Motion to approve? Damon, thank you. Second, Marty. Questions or comments?
Just, oh, everybody has access to board docs too if you want to pull it up on your phone. But I'm here at a meeting, I can see it. No, I'm just saying if you want to check it out. I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who puts in the time as coaches. And later on in our agenda, we have a bunch of new clubs starting at Brooks Hill. We had a bunch get approved at Jefferson Ave. These are people who give time and energy nowhere near paid enough to what they give our kids. We know a huge predictor of kids' success is positive relationships with adults, and these people go out of their way to put that time in. So huge thank you.
Thanks. How about any other comments or questions? All in favor? Any opposed? None. Seeing, hearing none. 7-0. So we have Fairport Educators Association motion to approve the 5-year agreement from July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2027. Motion to approve? So moved. Marty, thank you. Second? Mary Caitlin. Comments, questions? I will thank the staff and those who worked hard to negotiate this and for the what's the word? Companionship, partnership of the FEA and making this happen. We're excited to have a 5-year agreement. So all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing, hearing none, 7-0. Congratulations. And finally, a memorandum of agreement for additional class section. I believe we do this from time to time, so just need a motion to accept this MOA. So Mary Caitlin, a second. Marty, thank you. Any questions or comments for the administrative team on this? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing, hearing none, 7-0. Okay, presentations, a capital improvement project. We did have a small tour of the cafeteria area just before, at about 5:15, we walked through and saw what was going on, getting exciting. We hope the plan is to have this ready, that part ready, right, for the next school year, and it's looking awesome as a multifunctional area. But there's much more to our capital improvement project, and ask our representatives to come down.
then.
Oh, do you want to move the podium just to the side so we can see the TV? But I think you're going to be in the way of somebody no matter what. Is that right?
I've got it here. Better here? Okay. This is what Alrighty, good evening. Tonight's update is going to be a little different in format. In addition to the Phase 1A capital update, we do have the Phase 1B and high school finishes award. Award presentation. So the first couple of slides we'll run through. We'll take a look at the results of both of those bid openings, and then we'll get over to the Phase 1A. So the district received bids for the high school finishes project on January 24th, and then the Phase 1B project on February 3rd. You can see across all packages we had really good bid participation. At the bottom there, the high school finishes contract 302, that is the separate project. And then here you can see the apparent low bidders, including the alternates selected. One note to make here, the general trades contract 202 includes the Joanna Paring capital outlay project as well. And then here's a look at the overall project financials. And you can see in previous presentations, we've had our estimated construction value for Phase 1B and our high school finishes project. You can now see that those are the base bid and selected alternate values in there. And one other note on Phase 1B, we did have a handful of state contracts that we received pricing for, and that work will go on in conjunction with the capital project. So just looking at some of the milestone dates. So tonight is for the bid award for both projects, Phase 1B and the high school finishes project. Provided those all get the thumbs up, we will coordinate with contractors, line up our kickoff meeting, start getting the front end documentation rolling, submittals on early products we'll need for this summer, get insurances, schedule of values, and then start hitting the ground running in April. And then here's just an overall anticipated construction schedule. Again, broad stroke across each building. This is for 1B. It's a lot more district-wide, if you will, working in all the buildings except here at the high school. But we're looking forward to getting started on that.
Can you just give a quick reminder of just a few things happening in the different buildings?
Yep. So across all of the buildings, with the exception of Brooks Hill, we do have a lot of boiler work, boiler replacements, a lot of main office renovations, nurse office renovations, secure entrance upgrades, fire alarm improvements. New science classrooms at
Science classrooms.
Martha Brown. There'll be technology room renovations at JP. Those are past their useful life, so looking forward to those as well.
And just to clarify, main office, he means secure vestibule renovations, not main office renovations across the different buildings. So I just wanted to clarify that piece. It's the secure vestibule work that we'll be working on as part of our long-term safety and security plan.
Thank you. So now switching over to Phase 1A, here's just a closer look at the financials. So to date, the district has approved just over $365,000 in change orders, leaving us $3 million in change left in the contingency. We're still sitting at $182,000 left in our contract allowances, and based on what we spent out of the contingency, we're about a little over 10% spent. So looking ahead over here at the high school, work going on in the building, in the kitchen cafeteria. We're continuing that finished drywall work, ceiling grid layouts, along with installation of new kitchen equipment that's been delivered over the past 2 weeks. Up on the second floor, rooms 218, 220, we'll be installing that flooring that was delayed, and then continuing the framing and MEP rough-in in the classrooms that we've moved over to and started the renovation in. And then out on site, we're continuing the perimeter pipe installation
and the concrete curb work, provided we can work with the weather there on that.
218 to 20, those are the rooms already released for use. They're being used, but they'll do the floors during the break?
Correct, yep, next week. So here's a look inside the kitchen cafeteria. Again, some of that drywall and soffit work going on. And then this is inside the serving area. Then here's some of the soffit lighting going in. Some of the ceiling grid. And this is a tight look into the bathroom. Again, that plumbing roughing going on. Here's a look into the kitchen storage room. And then moving up to the second floor, you can start seeing some of the framing going on. Here's just another shot of that. And then here's out at the multi-purpose field, the excavation work for the bioretention area. And here's another look at that, and this is facing west of the fields. Oh. Yeah. Are there any questions?
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you. So we have presentation of the non-instructional budget. This was what was part of the meeting last week that was mentioned, right? But tonight it'll just be presented again. Yep, we're good.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present the 2022-23 overview of our non-instructional budget. Mr. Stevens is coming up here and he's going to help me present. But before we get going, I'd like to just say thank you to Mr. Stevens and his team, Monica Shannon and Chris Eckert, who have worked tirelessly to try to make sure that we're bringing forth a quality budget that meets our expectations, not only from the board's perspective, from a community's perspective. We have had administrators and directors interacting with our priorities, reaching out to staff with thought exchanges, community members as well. So we're building a budget based upon all this good feedback and information. Now, if you think about the non-instructional budget, it's really exciting because it's the backbone, it's the infrastructure, it's the guts that really make us or allow us to provide a high-quality program for our students. Think about it, 8 schools, 4 support buildings, all right? Over 1.2 million square feet. Think about that, 1.2 million square feet. We have a real serious operation happening here, over 300 acres to which we are responsible for, from parking lots to building footprints to technology systems to facilities and maintenance expectations, not only of our board, but of our community as well, has high expectations. Tonight, we're going to be reviewing some of our budget goals. We're going to talk about Governor's proposal for school funding and the outlook, the history of state aid to Fairport, historical trends of the budget and tax levy increases, review specific components of the non-instructional budget, and then if time allows or as we move along, board discussion on these very important ideas. These budget goals have not, just they're developed over time. They just don't happen. As soon as the budget is done, the budget process is completed in May, we start over again. It's a cyclical process. This board has made it a priority to confirm these, talk about these, have accountability to these goals relative to educational programming, fiscal sustainability, facilities planning, and this new one we're really excited about is focusing on conservation and sustainability. Mr. Stevens is going to come up right now and speak a little bit about the New York State aid to education from the governor's executive budget proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Provenzano, and good evening. Here you'll see a quick summary of the governor's executive budget proposal as it relates to school aid. Overall increase proposed of $2 billion over the 21-22 stated education funds. 1.6 billion of the 2 billion is related to foundation aid. So that's the continued commitment to fully phase in foundation aid. It was over a 3-year period. 21-22 was the first year for school districts to start receiving some of that phased in foundation aid, of which we weren't receiving over many years since the law's been in place. The formula as to how that'll work for schools across the state is that they'll receive the larger of half of the foundation aid due, or a 3% increase over the 21-22 foundation aid. For Fairport, due to the amount that's owed, we'll receive 50% of what's due, or $2.6 million in an increase in foundation aid for 2022-23. Expense-based aids, those are the aids that we receive based on expenses of the current year that's aided in the following year. So here, the proposed is to fully fund, so it's simply based on what we anticipate to spend through the rest of the year. Overall, between transportation, BOCES, building aid, our excess cost aids, categorical aids, looking at an estimated decrease of $127,000. Again, based on expenses, we'll continue to, that number could evolve a little bit if we see we're projecting to spend a little bit more through the rest of the year. Our actual aid in 22-23 will truly depend on what our final expenses is at June 30th at the end of the school year. Thank you. Here is a summary of our historical foundation aid and overall state aid budgets. So you can see in 22-23, foundation aid estimate is $27.7 million based on the executive proposal. And over the years, you can see our state aid budget projected, our draft for 22-23 is $46.6 million. The increases, if you want to jump to the next slide, you can see the foundation aid phase-in is important. As we look at historical data, we had minimal increases in foundation aid over the years, and that's where the adequacy piece always came into play between the governor's proposal and the legislative proposal in the budget before a final state budget was adopted in April. Here you can see already out of the gate for the executive proposal, we have that large increase in the proposal foundation aid for 22-23. So that helps us plan through the budget process as an earlier stage in the school year rather than waiting to see what happens in April with the final approved state budget. As it relates to our historical budget, tax levy and tax rate data, you can see in the graph below is the numbers from up above in the chart. 5-year average change in school budget of 2.4%, tax levy 2.6%, and tax rate of 0.54. Key note in the tax rate, we had some reassessments back in 2018-19 in the town of Perrington that had an inverse relationship on the tax rate. So as assessments go up, the tax rate is adjusted based on the levy that we're going to collect as a school district. So this just provides a little bit of the data as we've looked to maintain. We've had slight increases in budget over the years. Tax levy increase has been in the 2 to 3% range. This is since the tax cap was implemented. Remember, the tax cap is capped at 2%. However, there are exclusions that take place. So there could be some exclusions for capital debt service that comes into play that was voter approved. And our bus purchases are an exclusion of the tax cap, as well as the BOCES capital project, which is another exclusion under the tax cap. So that is how the formula has worked out over the years. And we have continued to stay at the tax cap and be at the levy limit, only requiring that greater than 50% budget approval and passing. You jump to the next slide. Well, Mr. Provenzano will jump in and go through some portions of the non-instructional budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Again, the non-instructional budget is the backbone of what allows us to provide an educational program to our students and meet our community's expectations. We're servicing about 5,400, a little bit over 5,400 of our students, but if you put private and parochial and charter school and our BOCES commitments, we're close to about 6,000 students to which we are responsible. Again, that includes the transportation, the community service, employee benefits, debt service, and other interfund transfers, which we will be referring to this evening. However, we know that facilities is critically important. Having facilities that are conducive to learning and sharing and being flexible and responsive to the diverse and ever-changing of the growing needs of our students and communities' expectations. There's a strong need and expectation that our community members have. We need to have state-of-the-art facilities. They want dollars invested in this budget that supports the maintenance of these facilities and our technology services more than ever, security with our platforms, increasing reliance on technological systems to do reports. These are all costs of doing business, as I frequently say, along with our employee benefits. If you look at the general support line item here, you'll see that the Board of Education, there's no change there. The board does not get a salary. There are no benefits or salaries associated with this position. They do this because they're servants and they have the hearts of servants, but there are line items and responsibilities that we have from supplies, materials, board workshops, professional development, required professional development. So that's what you see in that line item. You'll see a bump of 46% or just 46.5% for a district clerk. That's because we had to transition to a full-time clerk and making a salary adjustment there. So that's why you see a bump there. You'll see a bump in the chief school administrator's office. That's the superintendent's office, which includes the superintendent's salary and the administrative assistant there, along with supplies and materials that support the functioning of that office. Business administration and treasurer, all, if you continue to go down that line, you'll see an overall line items there with personnel and public information. You'll notice that there's dollars spent there, but about 110,000 of that will be BOCES aidable. So I think that's just maximizing BOCES services that we'll continue to talk about as we go through this budget process. So those are the percent changes in those areas that are worth mentioning. General support, which is again the physical operation of our buildings and the maintenance plant. Again, 1.2 million square feet, 300,000 acres. That's an incredible effort. It speaks to our commitment to facilities planning, maintenance upkeep, their salaries and benefits of our cleaning staff here, making sure that we're doing building repairs, our utilities, heating and electric, cooling that's required to support our buildings and so on and so forth. Those are the percent changes in those areas in particular. New York State mandated water testing is something we are required to do, and we happily do it. But again, there's a cost associated with it, all from these areas. General support, you'll see a 4.99% increase in central data processing and technical services. That is a increases in our network security, increases in our staff management system and how we understand and manage and support our staff. These are all driven by technologies. Network security is bigger than ever. There's requirements and laws that govern how we need to secure data. And again, we do that, and we do it with the highest level of fidelity and commitment to making sure that data is secured and our systems are able to manage the data that is required. More specifically, the Board of Education, the general total support, you'll see the board clerk's allotment in that first line of 26.13%. I spoke to the board clerk, was made full-time last year, and there was a salary adjustment associated with that, so we can have a full-time board clerk to support the district or the Board of Education's needs in getting material and managing all the work of the Board of Education. So again, that's your 26.13% in there. You'll see an overall line item of 2.2% increase when you put central administration, business administration, personnel, public information, central services, and special items. Again, we have many services running through BOCES. There's a cost, but you'll see a slight decrease there as we try to maximize efficiencies for an overall general support of 2.2%. Mr. Stevens is going to come up right now and talk about how we transport approximately 5,500 of our students plus private and parochial commitments that we have. He's going to speak to our transportation department expectations and budget.
Okay, thank you again. So here you see some of the variables with the transportation piece in the school district. These are the different variables in terms of what we have to budget for: homeless transportation, according to McKinney-Vento, private schools within the 15-mile radius, our tutoring transportation, we have our shuttles, sports shuttles, our midday runs, our special ed population for transportation with through BOCES. We utilize BOCES to help out with special ed, special needs transportation, any of our out-of-district placements. Within here, there's staffing, contract transportation, as well as our summer school transportation, in which we budget for as well. So overall, in the transportation, it's a mix of really 4 different functions. It's the transportation piece, our garage building, our contract, which is full outside contract transportation, and then we have our BOCES contract transportation. Here, the main piece and change you see is in the district transportation. Again, like Mr. Provenzano mentioned, within these codes are salaries, equipment, supplies, any contractual expenses, training, all those different pieces fall within here. The large increase you see is based on the contract settlement we had for our transportation, our drivers, the stimulus funding we've utilized and running through the general fund, and that's all primarily based on salaries within our transportation department. Garage building, that's simply a function of our utilization we continue to have with our bus wash. So as the bus wash is being used more, we have water, electric running, and we've been getting now we've got some years that we've got good data for. We're running it more consistently, and that's simply what we see there for the increase in the garage building. That's where utilities would run through in terms of the budget side for transportation. Our contract transportation, just keeping that flat at this point in time. The long-term hope is that we can continue to hire drivers in district, have the budget line up above and 5510 go up, and have 5540 drop. So that's the anticipated over there. But we do contract out approximately 10 runs, including our private parochial runs, as well as some in-district runs that have helped support our program as a whole in the district. And then our contract transportation through BOCES. Again, we contract out for our special needs programs, and BOCES has been a great partner in helping to assist when they can for that transportation. Overall increase of about 10.9%. Within the 5510 code is our budget for bus purchases. So we are proposing to replace 8 buses. Typically, we've done approximately anywhere from 9 to 11 buses in a given school year. It's a mix of 71 passenger, 28 passenger, some wheelchair buses. But this year, it's strictly all 71 passenger buses. So those do run at a higher ticket price. So trying to maintain and balance budget along with the transportation aid that comes back on the buses over a 5-year timeline, proposing to replace 8. And they're all 71 passenger buses. Also within garage building is our plow service. We've broken that out separately. It helps us track and have a dedicated plow service over to the transportation center that also is aided at our transportation aid rate.
Did I see correctly, Matt, that they are proposing that aid over 10 years or for bus purchases?
It's still, right now for our bus purchases, it's over 5
Right
years.
now.
However, if it gets shifted, it could shift to 10 years at the same transportation aid rate as far as we know.
Yeah. It just slows down the rate at which we get our revenue back. I
It
guess,
does.
right?
Yes. Yep. Because right now it takes 5 years to get the aid back on these bus purchases, but we have been consistently easing into the general fund. We did it several years back and got it fully in general fund, so that now we have approximately a local share of $350,000 to $375,000, plus or minus in every year that falls under the tax cap exclusion.
So it'd impact that initially.
It
until we
would.
get back into the pattern again.
Yes.
Over 10, yeah.
Yep, that is correct. Next piece, small budget line, but we have to carry it to function within all school budgets as community service. So when we have any evening use, we do budget a slight amount for some lifeguard costs, of which if there's facility use, we'd get back fees as revenue within the general fund. So just carrying the line item to have a small budget for this piece could go up or down in any given year. And then one of the larger pieces of the non-instructional budget is employee benefits. So these employee benefits are associated with all individuals in the district, not just non-instructional employees, but also our instructional staff. We have the employee retirement system, a teacher retirement system, our FICA Med Social Security costs. All three of those are based on a % of salary. So for the employer retirement system, we are estimating a rate to actually decrease the average contribution rate. There are several tiers, but the average contribution rate is decreasing from 16.2% to 11.6%. So that's why you would see the decrease in that budget line. Again, it's based on a factor of salaries. So it's 11.6% of those salaries in the employer retirement system. Teacher retirement system is projected to increase from 9.8% to 10.29%. So you see an increase in budget expense there of 11.4%. And then FICA Med is simply based off of salaries. So that's 7.65% of all salaries paid in the fiscal year. Workers' comp at a flat rate. We're part of a consortium there that has continued to try to maintain costs as it relates to premium contributions for districts in the consortium in Rochester. Life insurance, our unemployment, these are all pieces that we have to budget for. We do have expenses throughout each school year. Health and dental is the other large piece of benefits that we have as a district. We had we had an 8% composite increase in January of 22. The plan runs on a calendar year from January through December. So here we're budgeting for the second half of the plan year from July through December, and then projecting a 10% increase in January of 23 for the second 6 months of the fiscal year of 22-23.
That relative to ERS and TRS, that is set by the state?
Set by the state. Those rates are set by the state, correct. Thank you, Mr. Provenzano. And then we have to apply them to the salaries we pay as a school district. And then other benefits within here would be our flex spending, administrative fees, our health savings accounts, health reimbursement accounts, employee assistance program, any tuition reimbursement to those that qualify in the district, as well as compensated absences for retirements that we would pay out at year end or at the time of retirement. So overall, a 6.7% increase in the employee benefits line. Next, you see our debt service and our transfers to other funds. You can see we have a budgeted amount for bond anticipation notes. It's a principal and interest payment on the 2019 capital project debt. We have an interest payment coming up for $200,000 and a principal pay down payment we're budgeting of $230,000 to help start paying down that principal on the bond anticipation note for the current project debt the capital project that's ongoing right now. Our transfer to special aid fund, that is simply related to our local share as a district for our special ed summer school costs, Rochester School for the Deaf. We have a share, and then Medicaid picks up the other portion of the cost. And then our transfer to debt service, that is the outstanding debt, our payment for 22-23 related to all of the old projects in which we went to long-term debt for, as well as energy performance contract that we have debt outstanding. Here you see a decrease, and that's because we do have some debt that's falling off as a whole. On the revenue side of the budget, we also have some revenue that's dropping. So they do coincide as we align our debt service that's aided over 15 years for our reconstruction projects with the state aid that's flowing in. And then our transfer to capital fund, that's our annual capital outlay project that we are allowed to do as a school district and get building aid on the following school year. So that's our $100,000 capital outlay project within this budget as well. So overall, 7% decrease in the debt service and transfers to other funds, primarily related to our debt retirement. And here's a quick summary of the non-instructional, as Mr. Provenzano talked about before, our general support, transportation, community service, our benefits, and then the transfers and debt of a $3.2 million change between all of those different areas, or 4.85% draft non-instructional budget at this point in our budget development process.
And I guess you said at this point, and just emphasize that this is not a done deal yet, but it's where it stands at this point.
Where it stands at this point, yep. There are pieces as we continue to analyze our health insurance, as the bills continue to come in. Have not received bills for January, and that's the time in which we have open enrollment that takes place, so we have changes in plans, we may have new ads, we may have people dropping plans. So once we start to get those bills specifically, then we'll start to take a look and project that out for the next 12 months, really, in terms of the next school year. So that's the piece that we continue to analyze there as well.
All good. Quick question. So we've been, as a board, kind of discussing pay rate changes for different non-collective employees and talking about working through that. Does this budget account for potentially changing those pay rates?
There is a best effort to project those numbers,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Also could be a piece as we finalize budget and go through the process, if those need to be adjusted within this before its final adoption. Would be another area that we would have to look at, because that'll impact salaries, that'll impact benefits for the pension systems and all in FICA Med. So those are other pieces that, like Mr. Forsgren said, at this point in the process in February, draft budget. However, the board adoption of the full entire budget after we go through, I'm going to steal the timeline. Is not until April. I'll let him say the exact date, but that's not until April that the board would adopt a proposed budget that would go out to voters for approval. So I'll jump to the next dates for Mr. Provenzano to highlight.
I think the fun really starts when we start talking about our instructional programming, and that's happening on March 22nd. I know the board workshop, I believe on March 10th, will be an opportunity that the board will, is it? I got it. Will be another opportunity to talk about the instructional budget, the pieces that make our schools exciting, that gives our schools life. We're looking forward to presenting that on April 12th. We'll be presenting the total budget in its final draft and the adoption of a budget at the Board of Education meeting on that date in April. And again, this is the timing on this is working out very nicely, because as some of those other pieces that you are looking at, and as we continue to work on negotiations and manage those expectations, those numbers will come in nicely. By May 3rd, there'll be a public hearing where we'll present the budget, and we'll be, bringing it to our community on May 17th. There'll be a budget vote and board elections, where there'll be 2 Board of Education seats up for election from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. at Joanna Perrin Middle School. There'll be many more conversations on budget. I'm looking forward to celebrating our schools in the meantime and telling our story through our budget. Thank you.
Just a quick question, mostly for those who attended the legislative breakfast. Did they, I think I'm assuming, but was there any discussion around state budget being adopted on time? It seems like this year's not a contentious year.
I
so.
don't even think it was a question.
A worry
I think
this time,
pretty
yeah.
much, as we said, it was so positive. They seem to be in agreement. They like what the governor has put forward. There doesn't seem to be the arguing that we have had in almost every past year. So it appears to be moving smoothly at this point, and I assume it will be on time. There wasn't anybody who suggested it might not be.
Yeah. Just in years past, you went over some of the revenue numbers from the state, and that had been the executive's budget, and then it, you get the one house versions, and then they come all together. And generally it went up a little bit higher from the executive. I don't anticipate it's going to go higher from the executive this time, since she started out so high relative to many other years. But regardless,
There's some advocacy efforts relative to tax cap and exemptions to consider. That might change the landscape of it, but I don't know if there's any momentum behind those advocacy efforts, like, for example, tax cap, the social emotional needs of our students, mental health exemptions, so on and so forth. So that's what we're looking for. That will change the outlook on this, but again, it fits nicely in our timeline.
Even that, the tax cap, there seemed to be some legislators who were in favor of making some changes. As soon as it came up at the table with Jen Lunsford, she said, I'm already ahead of you. I think it should change. And when we had a Zoom meeting maybe a month or two ago, everybody on the Zoom meeting, all the legislators were listening to that, and we didn't get the usual, what we've had in the past. No, can't be changed, can't touch it, but different governors. So I think that's a big part of it as well.
Well, I guess part of for asking a question, not to give Mr. Stevens heartburn or anything, but we have been known to add a meeting or two after April 12th when it became tight and we still wanted to see other changes or other types of things. We have a little bit of wiggle room, but the legal deadline for us to adopt the draft budget so that the community has time to review it before the vote is April, I can't remember, 27th, April 20th. No, but we have to adopt it so that then it can be released to the public.
I'd have to check, but I think it's close to after break, like it was right around that time frame.
Yeah, somewhere towards the end of
Yeah,
April, right?
yeah,
So we
towards-
have a week or so
Yeah,
if
it's
we
usually
had
the
to.
third week in April-ish roughly is when it's fallen, but
Yeah.
sometimes it falls during a break week that's actually
We're not getting those
due,
vibes though
so.
this year.
No, we're not getting those
Right.
fives. I think that's good, but we have for several years in a row pushed it out past this 12th type meeting to another week and met back again to make final. So we have a little bit of wiggle room deadline wise. But
Well, the big difference is if you look at the foundation aid increases that we've had in years past, it was literally $50,000 of foundation aid increase, and this year's 2.6 million, so it's quite a bit different.
yeah, different year. It's where we don't have a crystal ball. I think what I'm partially excited about with our long-term plan efforts is that if they indeed follow the formula, we have a formula that allows us to then understand our revenue much better, for which we can do better long-term planning. So we'll see how that works out if they stick to it indeed. But it's always been on the books. It just hasn't been followed. So, okay. Do you have any other questions for Mr. Steven, Mr. Provenzano? I feel so formal. I never call you guys that. Sorry, I should more often. Okay. Thank you. Board discussion action items. We have policy first read, and policy committee got busy. All right, so are we still plugged in? 5 policies here, including the redlining of the masking policy. I will point out there had been some discussion at the last meeting if we wanted to adopt this after one read only. We probably need to separate this out and have a motion for that. Now, I don't know if it's worth discussing first to see if that's indeed what we want to do based on what you put there and the timeline that's been put out by the governor. Our idea was to have a policy that's much more workable for us as a district versus what happened last time, where it was quite restrictive and we weren't prepared for what happened. So, but we had a policy, needless to say, and it was being followed and did get followed and enforced, but times are changing. So anyway, that policy's up here as redlined, and then 4 others as well. So a motion to approve the first reading, or yes, Mary Kaylin, second?
Second.
Marty? Okay, I'll just ask, does anybody, let's discuss, and then we can see if we want to make a motion to remove that policy for a separate vote. Is that okay?
Yeah, I was gonna make the motion.
Well, I was
If you think you want it done now, you can go ahead. I just want to see if there's people have read it, changes to any of them.
there were a few tweaks suggested that I don't know if we want to change it now or.
Peter, can you click it so people here can see the red line?
Thank you. Yeah, I can't, but somebody, there we go. Oh, can you enlarge it? Thank you, yeah.
Yeah, so below is the old policy and above is what we worked on.
All right, so it's providing much more latitude.
But just so everyone's clear, we're providing the latitude, but we are still currently under the state mandate. So we are updating our policy so that as information from the governor comes, the superintendent and his team can put forth a plan to move towards what we are all hoping is the goal. But just so everybody in our community is clear, just because this policy is much more open-ended and flexible, we are still under the state mandate and we are still required to mask.
Right, our policy does not yet govern us because there's a higher level government that's forcing that, so. there was a recommended change, and that's where I guess the question, we can make those changes here, right? The phrase, where did that phrase go? I'm sorry.
It was, Brian, can you?
Oh, the
Mhm.
one one moment, please.
Yeah, it was, I think, just use different terminology where it says optional.
That's not in here. That was more for Brett's, for regulations.
That's-
Let me write that
okay.
down.
I was
That's
gonna
not
say, I
for the
didn't see
policy.
I
that
didn't
word,
either,
and
so
so I
I'm
was-
looking for it, trying to find it. Okay, so that would be
Okay,
more of a
and I-
regulation.
I would like to add vaccination rates along with infection rates and absenteeism. Nothing firm, not a specific rate, but just that those will also be considered.
Consideration,
Just
right?
considered.
The one, if I may, just the one line that you were speaking about
I was
was,
just gonna find.
all
it,
school members should feel comfortable wearing masks whenever they prefer. And I added it to my notes as we're creating the regulation, as the vaccination
Yep.
component will be part of those variables.
Yeah,
that
I'd
we're
like it in
considering.
the policy
Yeah,
though,
that's-
as we have infection
Yes.
rates.
Yep.
So,
and
And yes, that was the just, so we're not just speaking among ourselves here. The language I suggested is just, instead of saying masking optional, saying, you know, anybody is welcome to wear a mask whenever they want to. Not just a language change that strikes.
So put that in, Joyce, after rate of infection, comma, that community vaccination rates, is the word community?
and well, we have to decide, is it community or is it district?
I think we leave it open-ended and
What
say
did-
vaccination rates and then.
Yeah, maybe just that. Can't remember if Dr. Lenhart had suggested, I think she said
I think-
district.
I think
Yeah.
she's,
I think she
She
did say
said
that.
all
I think leaving it
buildings.
open is important for the
Yeah,
pol- for
just
the
say
policy part.
vaccination
Yeah.
rate,
Yep.
so.
Okay.
you know,
so
our
it'd just
rep
be
will
one
handle that
more
end
in
of
the
it.
list.
Erica, do you have this in your notes or do you want me?
I just wrote it down. I'm
Oh,
sorry, I don't.
no,
mean
no,
to
no,
overstep.
just to go to Pam.
Yep, I
Okay.
have it right here. So I put rates of infection, vaccination rates, and ability to consider, right? Is that okay there?
That's good.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
after rates of infection up there, it would be vaccination rates, just so.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that need to be done by motion? I don't think that does. Right.
Right.
But I'll go ahead and make a motion to pull 7515 to do the first and second reading today, and then we can make that change to 7515.
So, right, the motion then would include that change.
Correct.
Right, so
Right,
as,
be
as.
as amended.
As amended.
Yep. Do I have
And
a
it'll
second
just
to
be
the
one
motion?
read.
Second.
Okay, so we have a second. Any questions, comments related to 7515, having it removed from 9A? It will become 9A1? I don't know, whatever we'll call it, right?
However Pam works.
Yep.
The board docs.
No, all in favor of removing of this motion? Not removing of the motion, removing 7515.
And having
So
the
it's
service the
separate?
first and second read.
Yep.
Okay. Aye.
As amended.
Yes.
Right, as amended. Okay, so make a note. We will vote on that immediately next. That leaves 4 other policies as part of 9A here of the first read. Other questions related to these policy updates? Some are just really a review, right? And any that the policy committee wants to comment on?
All the 1200s are really just the legalities of board elections. So this was just following, BOCES and the our lawyers, any of their recommendations. So these are really not open to kind of wordsmithing. This is what's required by us.
Yeah, and if you scroll down on these, you can see where it has the different citations.
Yeah.
Right, and so is that a change in law? Like, we have a white line that was painted on the JP, right, parking lot where you're not supposed to. Is that no longer?
No, it was redundant. We had covered no electioneering within 100 feet twice
Oh, yep, I
in the
see that,
policy,
right,
so we
yep.
just got rid of the second time. Still
Yeah.
no electioneering within
I
100
was
feet.
gonna say, I would be surprised if that law changed, that you can get
No,
closer
it
to
just
the
is
Still can't
redundant.
electioneer.
So, okay. Thank you for clarifying that. And then the final policy up there is the library selection of multimedia materials and some changes there that can be seen. Everyone has access to those. Okay, no questions, comments for anything else? All in favor of the 4 remaining policy, first read? Seeing none opposed, 7-0. Those will be up for second read then in March. Then 9A.1, motion to approve policy 7515 as first and second read as amended.
So moved.
Mary Kaylin, second. Marty? I assume there's no more questions, discussions around that. All in favor of adopting that as our new policy? Any opposed? Seeing, hearing none, 7-0. Okay. Extra classrooms activities, these were referred to. Oh, I'm sorry, thank you, sorry. 9B. Motion to approve the agreement for professional consultant services from the U of R. It's really an increase of services related to mental health challenges, right? So, Mary Kaylin, second. Brian, questions, comments about this agreement?
Can I just get a better understanding of the timeline? It seems like this was starting in October, but we're not seeing it till now.
So the services have increased. We realized that we need to provide more professional development to our staff to support the range of needs that we didn't know existed in October.
Now, we did approve this as it was, so you can see where it's been scratched through for the increase of services, but we did approve this earlier.
Well, actually, I can jump in. It wouldn't require board approval until it hits $20,000. So it initially started off at $6,000. With the change that came to our office, I asked for it to be put together from special ed department, initial off, then it comes to the board for approval because of the amended amount.
Apologize. We've approved some with U of R in the past, but I'm getting too old to remember all the details. Okay, so that's why it's before. It's now over 20,000, which is right in our policy, I believe. Yep, thank you.
But it does, again, I appreciate how we were responsive to the needs. We know that there's some professional development that needs to occur with our paraprofessionals and our professional educators as well, so.
Yes, thank you for reviewing this contract. And other comments or questions? All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing, hearing none, 7-0. Okay, 9C now, extra classrooms. These were the ones, the clubs at Brooks Hill specific. A motion to approve these extra classroom activities. Joyce, thank you. Second, Brian? Questions, comments about these?
Just that the Battle of the Book sounds incredible, and I kind of want to do that on my own.
And I love anything called a kindness club.
I wasn't sure if it was going to be with March Madness too. I know, I was hoping.
I'm delighted to see clubs in the elementary school. That's a great thing to have. Yeah.
The expansion, again, this has been a budget item we put out to the community. It increased greatly in terms of budget, especially for elementary level, and would love to see that they are expanding them accordingly. The demand was incredibly even higher than we anticipated last year, 2 years ago. I guess it's because of COVID 2 years ago. Last year, the number of students signing up at the elementary level especially was incredible. So this is great. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing, hearing none, 7-0. District Sustainability Committee, motion to approve this as a permanent creation for the district. A motion to approve? Joyce, second. Marty, thank you. I believe Mr. Brian, you wanted to make some comments about this?
Just really quickly, this is something that several students brought to us earlier in the school year. My actually first workshop as a board member. They brought it to us and wanting to improve our sustainability as a district, improve our efforts, and we agreed. And so working with Tanya, with myself, with Aaron Brown, and a dedicated group of students and parents and community members and teachers, we've been meeting over the past few months, kind of formulating plans. And this is kind of our public, asking the board for our kind of public, what's the word I'm looking for? Backing, yes. And making sure that this is, I think, the important thing that this is a permanent committee, so that this will last beyond the current group and allow us to increase sustainability both as a board, in our decisions as a board and as a district, but also within schools as well. And from green teams at elementary schools all the way up to our facilities planning and our bus buying and all of those decisions that were made. And that's basically where we are now. But I know, it's one of our budget goals. It's part of our core belief statement that's coming up next. So, and I know that I'm preaching to the choir here because I know it's a very supportive board. But I just want to thank you guys on behalf of the members of the committee, for your support on this and for everything that you've done to kind of help get this off the ground.
Other comments, questions? No? All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing, hearing none, 7-0. So district core belief statement. I guess it's a discussion. As a formal adoption, we don't need, I guess, up for a little history. We created a core belief statement 7 years ago, right? And during a superintendent search, when the first round of the search did not get us anything that seemed to match the Fairport culture overall. And so we created a Board of Ed statement. It had specific areas that was addressed that with time just didn't seem appropriate anymore, or that weren't really of value for guiding us. So this is where we have amended, we've just drafted a new one, keeping many things the same, but also trying to make it, more universal to the school as a whole, where last one really was designed to help us guide our look for superintendents, administrators here of the school, right? So this is now to be somewhat of a guide in the long-term efforts as well, right? In terms of where, as a board, we put our beliefs. So that's there. I don't know that it needs adopted, other than to just kind of announce this is what we've put together as kind of a statement as a whole of what our beliefs are, and these will be some of our guiding principles in decision making. Other comments or questions? Do we think it needs to be further revised, edits, grammar, spelling?
This is extremely helpful as you build budgets, as you welcome people into your school district, as you engage in hiring practices. People can see this is our commitment, and this is what they're journeying into, right? And I think it's going to be a part of our strategic plan. I know it will be part of our strategic plan reboot, and we're grateful for this effort and this evolution of the core beliefs.
And just really quickly, I think this is meant to capture who we are now. And the previous one was very much an article of who the board was when it was adopted. And we just wanted to update it, kind of reflecting what has happened, changes in the board, changes in the world, and kind of reflecting who we are now. And I think it does that. Shout out to Mary Caitlin for pulling together a lot of the thoughts and to getting this in a digestible form.
Thank you. Okay, then we'll move on to the next one, facility planning. Part of our core belief statement, getting our facilities up to where they probably should have been, and then maintaining that. So you have a presentation for us?
Well, I have just prompts, and this is the board's discussion. Last week at the workshop, the board spent some time talking about building condition survey in district facilities. It's been an ongoing discussion. Minerva DeLand students transitioning to Fairport High School to making it a 912 building in 2026, 2027 was the focus of that conversation. It's anticipated that's going to be our current fourth graders. So if you have a fourth grader, that transition, there'll be ninth graders in 2026, 27. We're anticipating that's the date when that's going to happen. Last week we reviewed the BCS and relative to district spaces, district office and Balmer Place. And we talked about considerations, administrative offices and consolidation at Minerva DeLand and Martha Brown, along with our next steps. This was a big conversation. Definitely wanted to follow up with that. You've had over a week to process it and just to get some different thoughts. But, again, I'm not going to go over this line item by line item, but we know that's going to cost approximately $1.2 million. That's the estimate from our building condition survey that we're required to administer to take district office and manage the facilities there. Balmer Place, it's going to cost approximately $1.5 million to include maintenance and repairs there. Those are real costs. These are our facilities. We need to upkeep them, and the 1.2 and $1.5 million are dollars if we were to do this list in totality, what it would cost to upkeep these buildings.
An unaidable cost, right?
Thank you.
It would
Good point.
fully be burdened of the local community if we want to maintain them at the building condition survey level.
And we have people there. We have professionals there doing work. So why do we need Minerva Deland. There's been much talk about what is going to happen to that building. Well, we need Minerva Deland for a variety of reasons, and here's the list. We talked about it at length. If you go to our schools at any point in time, Minerva Deland is still being used. The auditorium, there's large group assemblies, there's ensembles, celebrations. It's used from July 1 all the way through the end of the school year in a full school calendar. Athletic fields, their usage is great. The gymnasium, there's basketball games, volleyball games, opportunities for students to use a quality space. The swimming pool is still being used. I bet you if you go there right now, you'd probably see students, our community using that as well. LGI, that's our large group instruction area where professional learning occurs. It's a viable space. And we talked about the possibility of administrative consolidation. Did you want to say something?
I was just going to say what you're describing is use outside of the Minerva Deland student population. This is out besides what Minerva Deland uses the auditorium for and the pool and all of that. Other groups use them as well.
100%. And our community uses that facility. You see community members walking around the track as well on the outside facilities. So reason to continually use it, because if we took Minerva Deland out of the mix, we would lose a viable space. JP, Brooks Hill uses that as the auditorium. Our elementary schools and our middle schools also use it for performances. And again, all the athletic teams, schedule games in there. And so on and so forth. But we also talked about the prospects of consolidating offices, because we have Balmer Place, we have district office, and there was a robust conversation around possibilities. Other alternative programming possibilities including preschool. We've heard from our community members that that's something that we should consider, this concept of community schools, continuing to exercise and understand what that means. We know that the services are greater in our community. There's components of Minerva Deland that we could still use as a functioning community service area. Select programs, partnerships with other school districts. We do have BOCES programs in there right now that we would continue to use. So there's reasons why, what we'd want to continue to invest in Minerva Deland. But again, you take 22 staff members who are at district office, and we just had a general conversation, right? That's the current office space. That's the amount of storage that we use. We can easily use that space at Minerva Deland, right? And we had this conversation in great detail. I don't know if anybody had any thoughts or reflections on it. We know that I think in 2017, the appraisal cost was $550,000 on that property. But just starting with that, based upon our conversation, just interested to hear some thoughts.
I mentioned that, talking with people in the community, even prior to being on the board, I think people thought we were moving in this direction anyway, just in terms of consolidating and hoping to have more people in one centralized location, which would be at Minerva Deland. So not a big surprise. I have had to go to Balmer. You're probably going to show that slide next. And I just, as a parent trying to find the location, obviously now I know, but when I first started going there, I didn't know it existed. It was hard to find. Having all those services, if you do have a child who might have an annual review or services outside of maybe normal, I don't know, not normal is not the word, extra support, going there would be a lot easier in one central location instead of trying to find multiple buildings. So,
well, it is another cost center too,
right.
I mean, you have operational costs, just to run these buildings, and I think that was part of our conversation. We still can use Minerva Deland. We could take, again, the 5,000 office square feet and repurpose that in central locations. For example, we talked about what could occur. Now, we're not going to go over this in detail, but the red spaces would be possible district office spaces at Minerva Deland. So the green spaces are shared spaces that we would continue to use and share with our school community. But it was interesting to see how that building could still be used. We still have to, we would have to, at Minerva DeLand, make the transition, right? So how do you create offices? How do you create different spaces whenever we decide, or if we decide, or if the board decides to consolidate, there would be a cost associated with that.
Yeah. And from my standpoint, I will struggle to authorize 2.7 million of construction on those two buildings when we could sell them for 1.2 and make a really positive swing of consolidating what you've said, parents over the years, the confusion, where do I go, where do I register, how do I get these services, what's going on, running around to different buildings when we can consolidate them into a single place, a building that we plan on keeping no matter what, and there's plenty of white space that we would hope, and that is not a strategy, that's not a plan, it's too far down the road, that though can become leasable to other entities that may have interest, BOCES or whatnot. So that's my opinion, at least. I would struggle to authorize that type of expenditure when we could sell the property for greater value and use it towards something like this.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. I just don't think it's conscionable to spend that on those two buildings. And it's just so disjointed, like the harmony and the collaboration that could happen in a setting more like this. And when we talk about community schools really means bringing the services that our community needs into easily accessible means. So if we're talking, we might move, some of the mental health services and special education services over into Minerva. That means our families can easily access that. Maybe health services. We currently do our, COVID clinic, and please, by 2026, I hope we do not have to have a COVID clinic anymore. But providing those services here, and I just love the idea of being able to offer preschool, and the fact that our administrative team and our office teams and stuff would be around little people, I think is always a benefit to everybody.
Well, that would speak to the next slide as well, because you have Martha Brown. There's space at Martha Brown that's currently unused. You can't use it for instructional space because of where it's located and how codes have changed. But there is viable space that could be used to take some of the 25 individuals, professionals who are at Balmer Place, and move them to this blue area right here. And, in schools around very important people, whether it's staff or most importantly our kids, I think there's some really good options to consider. So you would take, we talked about Martha, you would take Balmer Place, and you would take the district offices and use the sale of those as one-time, right, revenues, and decide where we want to put them relative to the reserves, or put it back into, the investment of these facilities. So that was the crux of the conversation.
And I was going to defer to Marty, so I still will. But when you mentioned preschool, I think we're all thinking universal preschool, UPK. So I know that has been on many people's minds for many years. I will defer to you. But I did want to just say not just preschool, but looking at UPK.
You're right, Erica. That's been a long term, like maybe 15, 20-year project in New York State and also in Fairport. So that would be awesome. And I think you told us, Brett, that the classrooms or the space at Martha could not be used as classrooms, just to point that
Correct.
out. That we're not taking classrooms away
Yep.
to do that.
And plus, declining enrollment there is such that, that space is not needed.
I suppose thankfully that happened at the same time, but due to code, it's unfortunate to have to take those offline for teaching areas. They're not bad classrooms, except they have no windows. They're the first floor, buried underneath that hill, right?
Yeah, if you take a look at that classroom on the end, I'm sorry, I
only
don't,
one with the window, right?
that has a window, and that could be utilized as a large group instruction area, which again would be great during the day, and then a professional development center, for our staff afterwards. But as we talk about the next phasing of facilities planning, we'll narrow these options down and put forth a project that will hopefully meet the needs of the community, and most importantly our students, and do what's or start planning the next phase of facilities planning.
Thank you. All right, so. Okay, so during the presentation of our capital improvement project that is currently going on, we were talking about the Phase 1B awards and others, and that's what we are at now, a motion to approve the bid awards that were opened earlier this month. Brian, thank you. Second? Second. Marty, thank you. Questions or comments about these awards, contract awards? No? Seeing, hearing none. All in favor? None opposed? 7-0. And then the 2022-23 school calendar. Motion to approve this calendar. Damon first, second. Mary Caitlin, thank you. Not-
Juneteenth is on there. Is that a new holiday?
That is a federal holiday,
It's
as
a
of
state
last year.
Yep.
Great.
Wait, sorry, did we vote? Are we-
We didn't
Oh,
vote yet, so
okay.
it's good time for
Sorry.
discussion, questions. Yep.
I was just wondering, I know with the 2021, 2022 school calendar, we had some difficulties with religious holidays in the beginning of the year. Were we able to move around that a little better this year?
Yes, 100%. It's later in the month of September, 26th and 27th, and October 6th will be the Jewish holidays.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking.
Okay, other questions, comments? I mean, I'm not a planner as much, but people really wait for this to come out so they can make plans, right? So we'll be able to release this to the community after our vote tonight. All in favor? Any opposed? None? 7-0. Okay,
It's released.
it's released. Right, thank you. So that brings us to board comments. Board members, we are at 8:30. Anybody want to make additional comments? That wasn't, available.
Frame it with the time,
Yeah,
remember,
just
you're at 8:30.
making a note, and we still have an executive session left, so.
Well, thanks for the people that stayed. Congratulations.
I think I just wanted to say thank you to Northside. They invited us in for our building visit last month, and it was just wonderful. We saw the coding, we saw kids in the classroom. Northside was able to work it, so part of their gym is back in commission for PE classes. So they were, it's not racquetball.
Badminton.
Badminton. They were going to town there, and it was just wonderful, and I really appreciate them having us in.
And looking forward to JA visit this week.
JA is Friday, correct. Okay. Motion to enter into executive session. Mary Caitlin, second. Joyce or Marty or who you're writing down. And all in favor? We do not have any plans to make any decisions afterwards, so after coming out of executive session back to public session, we will also immediately then adjourn. So no reason necessarily to hang out in the hallway while we go through executive session. We will be done. Thank you all.